that little one time was the time. You got it already.
Hello, welcome to Rumbii. I'm your host, Rumbii. As I mentioned last episode, I am depressed and I am trying my best to fight the depression and work through my creativity because my depression definitely sucks the creativity out of me. So I am challenging myself this time around to fight, push myself, try, don't fall back into the same patterns that I usually do, which is to just give up, stop creating. So here I am, doing it depressed. Oh my gosh, you guys. I've had a rough week. I'm not gonna lie. I've had a really rough week. Before I get into that though, I just wanna point out the amazing things that I've been able to do over the last week. I want to celebrate the good things that I've done just as a way to counter the negativity that's constantly swirling in my mind at the moment. So I wrote them down in my diary right here, and it's not much, but I'm so proud of myself. So I've been able to do 30 minutes of exercise every day. As someone who struggles with consistency and maintaining exercise, I've really been trying to just simplify it and like doing things that I enjoy. And I've been able to find something that I love. And I'm taking the time to like listen to my body when it likes to do something and when it doesn't, because I'm not trying to force myself to do things. So the fact that every day I've been able to do 30 minutes of exercise, I'm very proud of myself. And it's been outside. It's been outside each and every time. So I'm very, very proud of myself. I've also been able to eat somewhat healthy. And I say somewhat because my husband loves to bake. And so he always bakes some treats on the weekend, and I can't help myself. It's the weekend too. So I'm going to eat those cookies. I'm going to eat them. um, but I'm really proud of us because we've also been meal planning. So that's been something that's helped us sort of make sure that we're eating good. I know I am not in a good mental health state, so I'm going to do my best to like nurture everything else. So I'm going to try and eat right. I'm sleeping good, which is something I'm so glad I've been able to do, because once my sleep improves, that does improve my mood. So I'm excited to see the results for that. I know I will still feel the other effects of depression, but doing these things, I feel like, is like nurturing me in a different way, you know? I've also been speaking really kindly to myself, which is something that I find the hardest to do when I'm depressed. I get very negative and I get stuck on the negative thinking. I dislike how I look. I dislike my behavior. I dislike my decision making. I get hair depressed, like I mentioned last episode. So it's very important for me personally that I speak kindly to myself when I can. And something that's actually been coming up a lot over the last week is I keep kind of like chanting this little mantra that I made for myself, which is I am loving myself. And I keep saying it over and over whenever I'm like doing something that I'm really struggling to get through, because my body and my mind just wants me to like lay down on the floor. Things need to be done, life needs to be lived. And whenever I'm struggling and let's say I'm working out or I'm prepping vegetables for a meal that I need to make and I'm just struggling to get through it, I remind myself that I'm doing this because I am loving myself. The fact that I'm feeding myself nutritious food is loving myself. The fact that I'm going outside and exercising means that I'm also loving myself. So I'm trying so hard, you guys. I'm trying so hard. You know, it's funny how in the past it's just been the easiest thing to do to like give in to the depression and like isolate and keep to myself. But I'm really trying, I'm trying to change things around because as much as I can say that that's what always happens, at some point I have to also say I'm tired of that happening all the time. And I think I've gotten to that point where I'm just so tired of like wanting to set goals for myself and failing to achieve them because of my depression. And it's like, I'm not going to let that stop me from reaching my goals, As hard as it can be, I know that there are things I can do to help myself get to where I need to be. And I've done that in the past. And so I actually have evidence for myself. So I think those things that I've been able to do have really just helped me get to a point where I can give myself a little bit of grace. I'm tired of going through this on my own in private all the time because a huge part of what my depression is like is that I'm very good at masking. I'm very good at pretending as though everything is okay. And I do that around so many people I care about. And I feel like it's not fair to them because I'm not being genuine. And I feel like I need to start doing something about it. And I don't want to be the type of person to withhold parts of me when I am being around the people I care about. So I just want to highlight some of the challenges that I've had this week because it's important to also talk about the negatives in hopes that we can fix that. And that's something I really cherish from doing group therapy and exercise we did on a weekly basis was to look at all the things that went right, all the things that went wrong, the things you plan for, your goals, that kind of thing, just so you can give yourself a little bit of grace because as depressives, our minds just don't want us to be happy. And so we are in our heads a lot. We think a lot. We are very introspective. And in that thinking, we kind of overdo it. And it's very easy to convince yourself that you are not good enough or not worthy. So I'm trying to just channel that in this episode and share with you guys the journey in hopes that, by me talking about this on a weekly basis, we get to see all the specific issues that I have. I've had no energy or motivation. And, you know, that that one is it's the scariest thing to admit because in the past, prior to my diagnosis, me having no motivation or no energy was often perceived as laziness. And I internalize that to this day when I feel lethargic and I'm struggling to get out of bed. I often call myself lazy, and it's not very helpful because then you are ignoring the fact that your body needs rest, and instead of actually resting, you're focusing on negatives and stressing about it. So although you are resting, technically you actually aren't because your mind is just constantly thinking about the fact that you're laying there and not doing your chores or doing things that you're supposed to be doing. I feel like I had to mention this because this is the biggest challenge I have when it comes to allowing myself some rest. Because the reality is, if you're struggling to get out of bed or all you want to do is be horizontal, it probably means you're tired. It probably means your body needs rest. It probably means you are a little bit burnt out, you've overworked yourself, and you haven't prioritized rest. And as we know, a few weeks ago, I struggled with sleep, and that's kind of snowballed into this depressive episode that I'm going through. So it makes sense that I'm exhausted, right? Because I'm not sleeping properly. It is getting better, but it's still, the effects of sleep take a long time to recover from. So, in regards to that, I just hope that in the following week, I'm able to just remind myself that if I am that tired, if I don't want to do something, then maybe sometimes don't do it. Sometimes just give yourself the rest that you need and don't feel guilty about taking that rest. And you'll find that you will actually recover a lot better when you allow yourself to just give in to the rest. I've also had a really negative self image. And I think that's why it was important that I constantly tell myself that I love myself, because I mentioned last week I'm hair depressed. So my hair is not where I want it to be. And it's not that my hair is problematic. It isn't at all. I'm usually very capable of managing my hair, but it just happens to be something that I can't do right now. I don't have to have an explanation for it. I just don't. And so because of that, I really feel different within myself and my confidence is very low. And so I'm really trying hard to give myself a little bit of grace, understand that it's okay. And in terms of support, I've spoken to my husband and I told him that I'm feeling very fragile right now. I would really appreciate if you could give me more compliments, tell me more about my physical features that you like, because that will give me sort of like a reinforcement, kind of like, oh, if my boo thinks I look cute, then I'm cute, you know? And that just kind of helps, it helps you just get through those moments where it's really hard. I'm really struggling to like look at myself in the mirror, which I feel like kind of makes things worse, because I'm not looking in the mirror, and then when I see like a picture of myself or a reflection of myself, I'm very surprised, because I'm like, well, you haven't looked at yourself in a few days, and maybe you need to take some time and actually focus some energy into prioritizing yourself and maybe making yourself feel better. So I have been taking a lot of special care to focus on my skincare. I'm not really putting on makeup because, again, don't have the energy for that. But I know that at least if I focus on my skincare, at least that's a way of loving myself. So it's hard, I have to be honest. I'm struggling to stay on top of my skincare, even though I'm trying to make the effort, but I'm doing it. I found a simplified way of just like making sure that everything's taken care of and I don't forget. I have alarms on my phone just to remind me to do certain things. And yeah, it's hard, but I'm getting through it. I've also been noticing this huge desperation to feel better. And in a way, it's a good thing, but it also has its extreme tendencies. So for me, it's the fact that when I hate how I feel inside or how I look on the outside, I feel the need to like drastically start making changes to like help myself look and feel better. And so I'm I tend to be more willing to take on drastic measures. So that looks like forcing myself to exercise every day nonstop without getting breaks in between to the point where I injure myself. I'm sort of bringing it up now as a way to like kind of name and shame it, because I still don't know quite how to challenge that desperation, because it's so dramatic. And another way I can describe this desperation is kind of like, imagine it's like 3 a.m. and you are deep diving through like a fitness influencer's Instagram page, and you've convinced yourself that you need to be doing 2 gym sessions a day, and you need to buy all these equipment, and you need to stop eating these foods and start eating these foods instead, start counting your calories, and like before you know it, you have a spreadsheet open, calorie tracking. And no, just me. But that's what happens to me. Like I have these like bouts of like, you must do this thing right here right now. And that's why I'm practicing thinking about things in the long term. That's why I always refer back to thinking about my 90-year-old self. Take your time. There's no rush. There's no need to worry. And it's hard, I have to say. That desperation will always be there because it's very extreme. It's on a pendulum too. So you have that extreme. Obviously, the weight and diet and exercise, that's one thing. But there's also other things on the other end of the spectrum where you've convinced yourself that if I keep doing this thing, I will get this result. And it's never good. It's never good. And that's just, again, my reality. That's what I go through. And this desperation is very closely linked to fear. And I want to mention fear because I feel like fear is constantly around. Like right now, there's always something I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of not achieving the expectations that I've put in my mind. It's a lot of layers of fears. It's fear of being judged. Just like right now, the fact that I'm sharing this with you guys, there's a constant fear that I'm going to be judged. I have the fear of not meeting my expectations, whether it's the podcast, having a career. I constantly berate myself for not doing the right thing, which I really don't know what the right thing is, but in my mind, I've convinced myself that whatever I do is not the right thing. And it's a constant checklist in my mind of, have you kept the home clean? Have you supported your husband? Have you proven that you are successful to everyone around you? Like, why do I need to prove that? But it's all those things just end up culminating with paralysis by analysis. And that's why I say, I just want to be horizontal. I just want to lay down. I just want to keep to myself because I'm not fun right now. I'm not exciting. I'm confused. I'm worried. And I just hope that I get through this depressive phase because you never know how long it's going to last. Some are weeks long, some can be months long, but some can be years long. So it's like, okay. But then I don't worry too much about it because I also know that I am on medication. I have support. This is an outlet and I'm making the effort to do things that will help me. So I know that I will be okay. It's just that the fear of how bad is it going to be this time? And things like that are really hard to say to the people around you. And that's why in the past, I just kind of disappear and don't say anything or don't speak to people because it's like, how do I quantify these thoughts? And it's also difficult to share it multiple times. You know, you speak to your friend, you speak to your sister, you speak to your cousin, you speak to your aunt, you speak to this person, you speak to this person. And each time you're having to repeat, oh, I'm sorry, I'm in a very bad mental state. I'm not doing okay at the moment. It's not fun having to say that over and over. So it's just easier to sleep instead because at least you don't have to sit in this brain. I hope that this helps someone. I really do. Even if that someone is me. So I hope that the next week is better than the last week has been. I am doing my best to remind myself that sharing this is beneficial in some way, even though I might not see the benefit right now. I'm sure there will be a benefit in the future, whether it's my benefit or somebody else's. I have faith that this will find the right person. So, with that said, I hope that you stay awesome, be kind, and spread positivity.